Imagine an empire so ruthlessly efficient, so deliberately cruel, that its name alone struck terror into the hearts of nations. They didn't just conquer, they annihilated. They didn't just rule, they traumatized. Prepare to uncover the chilling truth behind history's most brutal empire, the horrific war crimes of the Assyrians. The most horrific war crimes of the Assyrian Empire, history's most brutal empire. For centuries, from roughly 911 BCE to 609 BCE, the Neo-Assyrian Empire dominated the ancient Near East, stretching from Mesopotamia to Egypt. While many empires rose and fell through conquest, the Assyrians distinguished themselves not just by their military might, but by an unparalleled, systematic, and almost theatrical brutality. Their methods of warfare, subjugation, and punishment were designed to inflict maximum terror, breaking the will of their enemies and quashing any hint of rebellion. They didn't just win wars. They waged psychological campaigns of horror, meticulously documenting their atrocities on stone reliefs and clay tablets for all to see. The Assyrian military machine was a formidable, highly organized force, equipped with advanced siege engines, iron weaponry, and a relentless will to expand. But it was their deliberate deployment of terror tactics that truly set them apart. Their cruelty was not just incidental to war, it was a calculated strategy, publicly displayed and meticulously recorded, designed to deter future resistance and consolidate their iron grip over vast territories. The Assyrian military machine, precision in brutality. The Assyrian army was arguably the most efficient fighting force of its time. They perfected siege warfare using battering rams, tunnels, and movable towers to breach fortified cities. Their cavalry, chariots, and infantry were well drilled and disciplined. However, what made them truly terrifying was their reputation. Before a single arrow was fired, the mere approach of the Assyrian army was enough to send shivers down the spines of their enemies. This was due to their well-earned notoriety for unspeakable acts. Assyrian kings, unlike many rulers who might downplay their cruelty, proudly documented their brutal deeds in royal annals and monumental reliefs carved into palace walls. These served as both historical records and propaganda, vividly illustrating the fate of those who defied Assyrian might. Tactics of terror, a catalogue of atrocities. The Assyrians employed a range of horrific practices, each designed to maximize suffering and create an indelible impression of their ruthlessness. 1. Mass deportation. This was a cornerstone of Assyrian imperial policy, practiced on an unprecedented scale. Entire populations, men, women, and children, were forcibly uprooted from their homelands and resettled in distant parts of the empire. This served multiple purposes. Breaking identity, it shattered communal bonds and traditional loyalties, making it harder for people to rebel. Forced labor. Deportees provided a vast workforce for massive construction projects, agriculture, and military service. Agricultural resettlement. They were often moved to underpopulated or newly conquered lands to boost agricultural output. The psychological impact of being torn from one's ancestral land, culture, and gods was devastating. 2. Impalement and flaying. These were among the most gruesome forms of execution, often depicted in Assyrian art. Impaling, victims were impaled on sharpened stakes, left to die slowly in public view, often outside conquered cities. This agonizing death was a stark warning. Flaying, skinning alive. Kings like Ashurnasirpal II boasted of flaying rebel leaders and even their officials, then draping their skins over city walls as a grotesque display. This was a direct assault on human dignity and a terrifying spectacle. 3. Mass slaughter and mutilation. Cities that resisted faced wholesale slaughter. Assyrian annals frequently boast of rivers running red with blood and piles of severed heads. Decapitation. Heads were often severed and piled high at city gates as trophies and warnings. Mutilation. Captured enemies, especially rebellious leaders, were routinely subjected to mutilation. Eyes gouged out, tongues cut out, ears and noses severed, hands and feet amputated. These disfigured survivors were then often released to spread terror. 4. Destruction of cities and scorched earth policy. When a city was taken, especially after prolonged resistance, it was often utterly razed. Razing and burning. Buildings were systematically torn down, treasures plundered, and what remained was set ablaze, salting the earth. In extreme cases, fields were reportedly salted to prevent crops from growing, turning fertile lands into barren wastes, ensuring the complete ruin of the conquered people. 5. Psychological warfare as a primary tool. The Assyrians understood the power of fear. Their brutality was not random sadism, but a meticulously planned component of their military and political strategy. Propaganda of terror. Their own royal inscriptions and palace reliefs depicting scenes of torture, execution, and devastation were deliberate acts of propaganda. They were meant to be seen by envoys, visitors, and conquered peoples, broadcasting the inevitable fate of those who defied Assyria. Demoralization. This reputation often led cities to surrender without a fight, preferring subjugation to the certain horrors of resistance. The evidence: Assyrian annals and reliefs. Unlike many ancient peoples whose cruelty is known only through the accounts of their enemies, the Assyrians themselves meticulously documented their own atrocities. Kings like Ashurnasirpal II, Shalmaneser III, Tiglath-Pileser III, and Sennacherib openly boasted of their acts. Their palace reliefs, like those found at Nimrud and Nineveh, depict gruesome scenes. Lines of impaled captives, piles of severed heads, soldiers carrying sacks of human remains, and the forced march of deportees. These weren't hidden. They were public displays designed to instill fear and awe. The purpose of brutality: maintaining an empire. The Assyrian Empire, built on conquest, faced constant rebellions. Their extreme brutality served as a stark, effective tool for maintaining control over vast, diverse territories. By making the consequences of defiance unimaginably horrific, they aimed to create a stable, albeit terrified, imperial order. This strategy, while effective for a time, also earned them the profound hatred of their neighbors, who would eventually unite to bring about the empire's cataclysmic downfall. Conclusion: a legacy of unrivaled cruelty. The Neo-Assyrian Empire stands as a stark and chilling example of an empire that consciously and systematically weaponized terror. Their methods: mass deportation, impalement, flaying, mutilation, and the utter destruction of cities, were designed not just to defeat an enemy, but to annihilate their spirit and break their will. While history is replete with brutal conquests, the Assyrians' self-proclamation and meticulous documentation of their horrific war crimes earn them a singular, terrifying place as perhaps history's most brutal empire. Their legacy remains a dark mirror, reflecting the extremes of human cruelty and the devastating costs of unchecked power.